Hello.
Mr. Hudson, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Jason. How are you today?
I'm doing well. It was a big day yesterday, Imran's hearing. And then, of course, as I'm sure you heard, Andre Taggart received a letter from the law firm that's representing Imran, kind of a threatening letter demanding money from Mr. Taggart.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the craziest thing that happened was Chris Gowen, the lawyer for Imran Awan, said in court that he wanted to increase the radius of Imran's house arrest from 50 miles, where it currently stands, to 100 miles. And the reason that he gave was that Imran is driving for Uber. However, a journalist for the Daily Caller has contacted Uber, and a spokesperson for Uber by the name of Susan Hendricks says they have no record of Imran Awan listed as driving for the company. And other people from the crowdsourced community have found that the guidelines of Uber indicate that if you have any moving violations or DUIs, you can't drive for them. So it certainly seems like there's a lot of evidence that would indicate that Imran is not an Uber driver. And I'm going to get the court transcript as soon as I can. Of course, with the long weekend, that might be a couple days from now. But I want to really make sure we understand quite clearly what it is that Chris Gowen said, because if he has misrepresented to the court his client's occupation, and if he, I was just looking at the D.C. Bar Rules of Professional Conduct, and Rule 8.4 describes misconduct. Part C there talks about the definition of professional misconduct being to engage in conduct involving dishonesty, fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation. And to me, in my opinion, those seem like things that Chris Gowen may have done.
Well, let's back up here just for a second, Jason, and take a look at the letter that Andre Taggart has received from that law firm. So, to my understanding, the amount that they are now asking for is somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 worth of damages.
Yeah, something like that.
And if I recall correctly, Mr. Taggart has receipts, etc., for the items that they're also mentioning in this letter.
Right. There are some items that Andre Taggart had purchased from Imran Awan when he was moving into the house and Imran was moving out. And yes, Andre has stated that he has the receipts for those items, which this letter now claims were stolen.
Well, I'll tell you, it's just amazing to me the sheer depth of the criminality that Imran Awan is willing to. He's just a stinking criminal,
Yeah.
And I can't say much more for the law firm, because if you stop and think about this, that letter is, and of course they'll argue that it isn't, but that letter is a letter of intimidation.
Oh,
that
of
letter
course.
is basically saying, you know what, you wanted to open up your fat mouth and you wanted to talk bad about Imran Awan. Well, look what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And when you stop to consider that those attorneys, if I'm not mistaken, have done work for the great dishonorable former president, Bill Clinton, it seems, it just amazes me the lack of integrity. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'd like to share with you a little bit of information that I've just received from the American University website, where Christopher Gowen is a professor. And this is sort of his professional biography. It says, Professor Gowen joined the faculty of American University Washington College of Law as an adjunct in May of 2010. He teaches legal ethics, law practice management, right? So
he teaches legal ethics.
Yeah. Prior to entering private practice, Professor Gowen served as senior staff attorney of the American Bar Association's criminal justice system, and he worked for former President William Jefferson Clinton for 5 years as a traveling aide and a fact checker for President Clinton's memoir, My Life, which I think Charles Ortel would have quite a lot to say about some of the facts he might have checked in that book.
Oh, my goodness.
He's worked for several different initiatives for former President Clinton, including the Clinton Global Initiative, the Clinton Health Access Initiative, the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Library, and the presidential campaign to elect then-Senator Hillary Clinton. Seems to me each of these organizations are either under federal investigation or a great deal of suspicion for criminal activity. I think this guy, Christopher Gowen, really should be looked at.
It seems to me he ought to be a professor of legal unethics.
That's right.
And he probably served as a misfact checker. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness sakes! Well, here's what I would recommend. Not that I'm an attorney, but I was very impressed with the attorney that you had on last night. And since he's retired, maybe he would be willing to dabble in law and take Mr. Taggart's case. And in regards to Imran Awan claiming that he owes him 10 to 15 grand, I would that thing is going to be very interesting, and I think that attorney would enjoy playing with it, and I do mean playing, because I would love to see that case go forward and have Mr. Awan have to walk into a courtroom to claim that. That would be interesting.
It's also interesting that on the very same day, Robert David Steele has chosen to send a ridiculous, unfiled legal complaint to me. So it seems as we start to ratchet up the pressure on all these players that are trying to, push this school play forward, they keep trying to do things to stop us, but I don't think the things that they're doing are going to be very effective.
Yeah. So the way I understand Mr. Steele is that in this supposed undocumented, unfiled lawsuit, that he's actually listed Queen Tut
Yep.
as a defendant.
Yep.
Well. That's funny. I'm sorry, but that's funny. I mean, Mr. Steele, why don't we put down Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and SpongeBob?
Yeah, well, he had Squidward in there, who is one of the code names. He seems to think that he's suing me for $15 million.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah.
So, undocumented, unfiled, not stamped.
No, it's nonsense. It's pure nonsense.
I also understand that for some reason in Mr. Steele's bio, at least on the in regards to the lawsuit, that he has selectively removed the portion that said that he authored that manual,
the open source intelligence manual. Yeah, well, I would consider that basically an admission by omission that Queen Tut was right on the money, that he had nothing to do with that, and that if he does intend to actually file this lawsuit, at least he knows that doing that would give us more ammunition, as if we needed any more, to indicate that he's a liar.
Yeah, I would welcome it.
Yeah, I mean it's completely nonsense.
It would be another interesting day. In court for the question to come over. By the way, just so that we can make sure that this. What about this? What about this manual that you claim to have written? Oh, I could hear it now. Well, that has nothing to do with the lawsuit. I beg to differ.
Right. The one last thing I wanted to say about Mr. Taggart's situation is that Dave Acton, of all people, he's been producing some helpful videos lately, so he's had a bit of a change of heart. He's put up something about spoliation and evidence preservation notice. And again, I'm not a lawyer either. I don't know exactly what that's getting at, but in terms of Andre Taggart's case, it seems that Chris Gowen and his law firm have opened the door for Mr. Taggart to take some sort of legal action. I'm not sure exactly how he'll go about doing that, but I definitely want to reach out to our crowdsourced community. I can't speak for individual lawyers, and I know retired lawyers, and depending on what state people have their law license in, there's all kinds of parameters that determine when and how a lawyer can or cannot help someone. So I think if we could find a lawyer that would represent Mr. Taggart in at least responding to this letter, I think that there's a chess game to be played with these guys, and I don't think they're that good at chess. Taggart could, I guess, file a spoliation and evidence preservation notice, and then what would happen is all of the stolen IT equipment and all of these items that they're naming in this lawyer's letter would become evidence in the lawsuit. And I mean, again, it's just sort of calling their bluff as far as I understand it.
Okay. That's an interesting angle. And I don't know, why does he use the name Acton?
I believe that's their mother's maiden name, and Dave has an acting career, but coincidence there. The alliteration is coincidental, so I think that's his acting name.
Oh, okay. So no different than Rock Hudson, huh?
Something like that, yes.
Okay, well, I don't know Mr. Acton, but I have a lot of respect for him because of George's opinion of his brother. I know that there were some, drama at one point, I guess, between the two and crowdsource and all that mess. I don't like to get into that kind of crap.
Mm-hmm.
But according to George, his brother has a plethora of knowledge, of legal knowledge, and
he's been helpful the past few weeks, so we welcome that.
So I think that's excellent, then. I really do.
Yeah.
And I commend him for it, then.
Mm-hmm.
So, because, it really does come down to people working together, not stopping the drama, stopping the arguing,
mm-hmm.
the, negative inference, etc. We either work together or we don't.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if we don't like each other, then fine, we don't have to have a drink together, right?
Right.
Well, that's great. I think that's good advice, and I'm very impressed with Mr. Taggart.
Yeah.
He's definitely a good example of the quality of soldier that the Marine Corps puts out.
Mm-hmm.
I really commend his willingness to take a stand, and because it's not easy to be in his position.
He's an extremely impressive guy by all accounts.
Yep, I like him.
Yep.
Anyway, let's take a look at some intelligence here. Our concern here at the Hudson groups is this. We know that Imran Awan had either some kind of bracelet, whether it's an ankle bracelet or a wrist bracelet or whatever, but we know that he was ordered to wear one, correct?
Yes, a GPS device.
Okay, and we also know that he was given a curfew, which, if I'm not mistaken, he had to be in his residence that he told him he was going to be in by 10 p.m. at night. Right?
I'm unsure of the time cutoff, but I do know they were trying to extend it.
I'm pretty sure it was 10 p.m.
Okay.
And he was required to stay in that residence from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. the following morning, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And he was limited to 50 miles.
Yes.
Okay. Now, they walk into the courtroom, and his attorney, who's so knowledgeable and concerned about lawyer ethics, proceeds to possibly to commit a fraud, basically, to defraud the court by telling the court that Mr. Awan is driving for Uber, and because of that, he needs to have not only the distance extended from 50 miles to 100 miles,
yeah,
but he also needs the curfew extended from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Is that correct?
Yes, and we discussed this briefly on Lee Stranahan's radio show on Sputnik Radio yesterday, Fault Lines with Nixon and Stranahan. And we touched on briefly that I don't know how many Uber rides on average would exceed 50 miles. Even going to the airport, which is probably the furthest most people would take Uber, is less than 50 miles.
Right. So we need to think about that for just a second. We're looking at this from an intelligence analysis standpoint. What we have to be asking ourselves is why.
Right.
So now we've got this attorney with this law firm walking in and telling the judge this information, which we also know, supposedly, is incorrect, that Mr. Awan, unless he's using some other name, a fictitious name, that he is not involved with Uber.
That's what Uber says.
Okay, so just stop. Okay, so we're going to take that for face value right now, okay?
Uh-huh.
So he is not affiliated with Uber, which means he is not a driver for Uber, which means his attorney walked in and lied to the court.
It's possible. It seems that way for sure.
Well, it has to be one of two things. The attorney walked in and lied to the court knowing that it was a lie, or two, Imran Awan has lied to his attorney,
right,
which caused his attorney to misrepresent to the court. I guarantee you, since this man is so concerned about ethics, that's what he'll do.
Yeah.
Even though he may know that the lie was a lie, he'll blame it on Imran Awan.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's going to challenge it, too. Possibly nobody's going to challenge it.
Well, that's what we're hoping to do. I think that you've hit on something important there. I bet Chris Gowen is used to going into empty courtrooms like that and saying whatever he wants and having no one challenge it because no one's there to hear it. There was very little press there.
Yes, but you can say anything that you want, and as long as nobody challenges it and proves it otherwise,
Right.
It's going to stand, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we're dealing with here. Now, that's all well and good, and if he did do something like that, it's a criminal act,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. But I'm not an attorney, and so you might want to pass that along and get an opinion on that. Seeing how attorneys, plural, all of them, are so concerned about ethics,
Yeah.
which makes me laugh. But I would imagine that the only thing that would happen there is that if it was one of us that perjured ourselves and lied to the court, we'd be looking at jail time. But the attorneys, okay, seeing how they're all brothers and sisters in the law,
Mm-hmm.
it would seem to me that he'd get a little slap on the hand. Maybe the bar association would look at him and point their finger and say, "Naughty boy," and then they'll all laugh in the back room while they smoke a cigar. And anyway, that's one thing that needs to be addressed. But here's the questions that we really need to be asking ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Why does Imran Awan want and need the distance that he's limited to now expanded?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
Why does he need his curfew extended from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Think about this. If we were to take a map and we were to pinpoint where Imran Awan is currently located at the address he's supposedly at during this in-home incarceration type deal,
Mm-hmm.
and then we draw a 50-mile radius on that, and we take a look at it, what that tells us is that anything that he had to do within that 50-mile radius is most likely already done. He may have had stuff stored. It's hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
But now, if we take and we go to that 50-mile radius, and then we extend off of that, draw another circle now,
Mm-hmm.
to 100 miles, there is something between that 50-mile marker and that 100-mile marker that is extremely important to him.
Right.
Now, that could be a warehouse of cars. It could be a storage unit full of cash or gold, or it's hard to say.
Uh-huh.
But there is something that he is desperate to get to between that 50 and 100-mile marker.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that we know where his current home is, though, do we?
Well, it's going to be the one that he listed with the court. That is because he has to say, I'm going to be staying at this residence at this address.
Got it.
While I'm walking around with this damn ankle bracelet.
I'll have to check that court document.
But somewhere between that 50-mile radius and the 100-mile radius, there's something extremely important that he needs to get to that he can't get to right now.
Mm-hmm.
If it's people, then why couldn't they come see him?
Right.
Now let's look at it and say, well, there is nothing between that 50-mile and that 100-mile radius that he needs to get to. There's no items that he's trying to recover or obtain.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the other reason or reasons that he would want and need to get to that 50 and 100-mile radius?
I don't know.
Well, for one, it changes jurisdiction. We need to look at the jurisdiction aspects of this. Let's say, for example, that he was planning his escape.
Right.
Well, I know what I would do, or one of the things that could be done as an operator. I would bring in, and we're just talking a scenario here.
Sure.
I would take a look at the small airports that could handle a private jet in that 50 to 100-mile range. And let's say, for example, this jet, we're going to suppose some things here. Let's say that this jet flies in from Pakistan, has some Arab sheik on board, and he flies in and to some major airport and checks in. Maybe he does that, with customs. But then he takes his jet and flies it to a smaller airport that doesn't actually have customs personnel located there.
Uh-huh.
He gets off his plane, and a couple of completely covered women walk off the plane with him. They stop for a bathroom break.
Uh-huh.
Imran Awan, he drives past his 50-mile marker. So now he's got 50 miles of distance between him and the legal authority monitoring him, right?
Right.
So he's got, not only does he have distance, he has time.
Right.
He has separated himself with time, and that time, that amount of time, that distance, gives him an opportunity to
put on a burqa and get on the plane.
That's what I would do if I wanted to get him out of the country.
Wow!
But inside of the burqa is not two women.
Right.
It may be one woman and one man. Right.
Right.
And the man is an agent, another agent or a new agent that you want to insert into the country. And bada bing. An exchange of clothing takes place. They walk out, board the plane, off it goes.
Wow.
And Imran's, position is, let's say, for example, he is and has been an ISI spy, and he simply goes back to Pakistan and flips this country the finger, and then he trains other spies. He just doesn't have any intentions, possibly, of coming back to the United States. That's one scenario.
Right.
Now, let's say, for example, that another scenario is that he is trying to get to some physical material and also escape, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And what could that physical material be? Well, we know in talking with Mr. Taggart that one of the things that he found was these high-end toner cartridges that would be utilized in conducting high-end printing, right?
Right. He did make a point of saying that.
Well, this isn't the best case scenario for a spy to gather and store information, but it's a very secure way to do it. Now, people may disagree with me on this, but I assure you that one of the items that is in great demand today with any spy agency are the old Olivetti type typewriters.
Mm-hmm.
They can't be electronically accessed.
Right.
So if you're wanting to put some information together for somebody, believe it or not, they're typing it out and storing it in paper files again.
Huh.
What if Mr. Awan has acquired all of this information and actually has a file on these various congressmen, senators, etc., has paper files? Mm-hmm. And so as he was stealing the information, he was actually making paper copies. For all we know, he could have a storage unit full of file cabinets on all of our congressmen and senators. And it could be he's trying to get to that information.
He seems mostly computer-oriented, but certainly anything is possible.
Well, and I agree with that. I mean, let's face it, you could put a ton of information on a thumb drive, right?
Right.
But what if you were concerned about hacking, and you don't want your systems to get broke into, but you still want to store the information? I mean, I'm not going to disagree with somebody if they were to say, look, why wouldn't he put it on a hard drive and then just store the hard drive? And why wouldn't he put it on several thumb drives and store the thumb drives? There could be a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that I'm just trying to put some pieces together of possibilities based on the information that we know of.
Escaping seems like the most likely one to me because, he could be very fearful that more serious charges are about to come about, and he might be, first of all, facing jail time, and second of all, if there is a larger conspiracy and he's the one who's been apprehended, certainly other conspirators would have a great interest in him not saying anything and his case not moving forward, and certainly an effective way to make that happen would be for them to try to kill him. So he might be fearful for his freedom, he might be fearful for his life, and leaving and returning to Pakistan definitely seems like something that he's demonstrated an interest in doing, in that he was arrested at the airport.
Right, and there's no way that he could move to a major airport right now.
Right.
He's got to get himself into a position where he can quickly cut the device off of himself.
Right, and then
quickly get to a location for his extraction.
Right. So as soon as they realize that the device is gone, it takes them an hour to get there, and he's off.
Yeah, he's got distance. He's separated himself by distance and time.
Yeah.
If it were me, if I was running the operation to get him out of the country, I mean, we'd cut the damn thing off of him. He'd immediately be put into a vehicle going in another direction, and that device would be attached or would be tossed into the back of a pickup truck of somebody unknowingly. It would be attached to a semi-tractor trailer driver unknowingly to him, and that device is on its way. And now we've got the authorities on a wild goose chase.
Exactly.
The question is very simple: why does Imran Awan need to extend the area he's allowed to be in. What is laying between the 50-mile and the 100-mile marker? What is the reason for it? There's a reason.
Yeah.
And we need to figure it out. And the first thing we need to figure out is, did the attorney lie to the court about him working for Uber?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Hudson. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.